In the dimly lit office, surrounded by screens glowing with data, Jeff leaned back in his chair, fingers pressed together in a steeple. The world saw him as a billionaire, a titan of commerce who had transformed a modest online bookstore into an empire. But in this moment, with the weight of secrecy pressing down on him, Jeff was just a man staring into the abyss of a decision that could destroy everything. The email had appeared 2 days ago, buried among countless messages. No subject, no sender, just a single line of text that made his blood run cold. You're not the first. Attached was a file, encrypted, sophisticated enough to bypass the company's most secure firewalls. Jeff's first instinct was to delete it. Instead, curiosity, or maybe something darker, led him to open it. Inside was a series of documents, blueprints for a propulsion system unlike anything he had ever seen. Equations that shouldn't exist, referencing materials that weren't supposed to be possible. But what gripped him was a faded photograph, dated 1983, showing a sleek metallic structure with the words Project Orion etched along its side. At the bottom, a handwritten note. They buried this for a reason. Walk away. But walking away wasn't in Jeff's nature. The more he dug, the darker it got. Classified projects, scientists who vanished without a trace, aerospace engineers with no public records of their work. Blue Origin was supposed to be a new frontier, a beacon of human innovation, but this was a glimpse into a shadowy past that had been meticulously erased. That night, he couldn't sleep. The numbers swam behind his eyelids, the equations whispering promises of speed, efficiency, a path to Mars in months, not years. But every instinct screamed that this was a door that once opened, could never be shut. At 3:14 a.m., his phone buzzed, shattering the silence. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. You have no idea what you found, a voice rasped, low and distorted. Shut it down before they shut you down. The line went dead. Heart pounding, Jeff stared at the screens, at the impossible blueprints glowing in the dark. He was no stranger to risk. He gambled billions, faced down competitors who would have killed his dreams without blinking. But this was different. This wasn't about money or power. This was a warning. And for the first time in years, Jeff felt something unfamiliar. Fear. Jeff's security team was efficient. By morning, the encrypted file had been dissected, analyzed, and locked behind layers of digital fortresses. But no one could answer the question that haunted him. Who sent it? More importantly, why now? He paced the length of his office, eyes flickering to the cityscape outside. Sunlight pierced through glass walls, but the chill from that midnight call lingered. His CTO, Marcus, was still pale, fingers tapping nervously against a tablet. This propulsion system, Marcus began cautiously, if it's real, if these numbers check out, it could cut travel time to Mars by half. Maybe more. I don't care about Mars, Jeff snapped, more harshly than intended. I want to know who the hell had this and why they sent it to me. Marcus swallowed. We ran a trace. The IPs looped through a dozen countries, but there was a ping. Brief, almost impossible to catch. He paused, as if wishing he hadn't spoken at all. Where? Jeff's voice was a cold blade. Huntsville. An old aerospace facility decommissioned. Officially, it's been mothballed since the 90s. Unbelievable. Huntsville had been ground zero for countless NASA projects. If something had been buried there, it wouldn't have been by amateurs. Jeff clenched his jaw, mind racing. The pieces didn't fit, yet. Prep the jet, he ordered, leaving no room for discussion. We go now. The Huntsville facility loomed like a ghost of the past, faded insignias, cracked asphalt, fences sagging under rust. No guards, no lights. Just the hollow silence of a secret well-kept. Jeff stepped out, Marcus close behind, clutching a briefcase as if it might save him. The doors were locked, of course, but money had its privileges. A discreet call to a senator's aide, a little leverage applied, and they slid open with a groan of protest. Inside, darkness stretched, broken only by beams of flashlights. Dust swirled, disturbed for the first time in decades. Old monitors, control panels, the scent of burnt circuitry and neglect. But deeper in, past corridors lined with forgotten projects, they found it, a reinforced door, untouched by time. Sir, Marcus whispered, voice brittle. Maybe we should. But Jeff was already at the keypad, fingers brushing over it. The numbers had long since faded, but instinct guided him. 1983. The year on the photograph. A soft click echoed, and the door slid open. The room beyond was pristine, out of place amidst the decay. Screens hummed to life, bathing them in cold light. And in the center, mounted on a pedestal, was a small metallic device. Sleek, unmarked, yet unmistakably alien in its design. Marcus exhaled sharply. What is that? Jeff approached, eyes fixed. Up close, he could see faint engravings, symbols he didn't recognize. And then his phone vibrated. No service, no bars, yet a message appeared. Last warning. Leave, or we bury you with it. The lights flickered, and for a heartbeat, Jeff could swear he heard something. A low hum, almost a growl, resonating from the device. Cold fear knotted in his gut, but he forced it down. Whatever this was, whoever was behind it, they had gone to extraordinary lengths to keep it hidden. Which meant only one thing. It was worth finding out. Secure it. He ordered, voice steady, even as his hands trembled. But in the shadows, unseen, a red light blinked twice, then went dark. They were 30,000 feet in the air when the first warning came. Jeff was reviewing the photographs, close-ups of the device, the symbols, every angle his team could capture before packing it into a lead-lined case. The jet's cabin was quiet, the engines a distant hum. Marcus sat opposite, eyes flickering nervously to the briefcase between them, fingers twitching every few seconds. A chime cut through the silence, and the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. Sir, we've got company. Unidentified aircraft, closing fast. Jeff's eyes narrowed. Military. Negative. No transponder, no comms. The words hadn't fully registered before turbulence hit. Violent, sudden. The jet lurched, sending papers and tablets skidding. Marcus yelped, clutching his seat as Jeff gripped the armrests, jaw clenched. What the hell is going on? Jeff snapped. The pilot's voice was tight, strained. They're not responding. Trying evasive maneuvers. Another jolt, harder this time. Through the window, Jeff caught a glimpse, sleek, matte black, no markings, no lights. Just a shadow against the clouds, keeping pace effortlessly. A second shadow appeared on the opposite side, then a third. Too fast, too precise. Not military. Not anything Jeff recognized. And then the lights went out. Emergency systems flickered to life, bathed in crimson glow. The jet leveled, engine sputtering but holding. Marcus was breathing fast, knuckles white against the seat. What is this? He stammered. Who are they? Jeff's mind raced, piecing fragments together. The encrypted file, the warning calls, the abandoned facility. Someone was cleaning up loose ends. They're here for the device, he muttered, more to himself than to Marcus. What do we do? Jeff's gaze hardened. We make sure they don't get it. He reached for the briefcase, punched in the code. Inside, the device lay nestled in foam, smooth, dark, humming faintly now, almost a purr. Symbols glinted coldly, taunting him with secrets. A sudden impact rocked the jet. The emergency lights dimmed, a shower of sparks from overhead panels. The cabin door burst open and one of the security team staggered in, blood streaking down his face. Sir, they've breached. A flash, deafening, and the guard crumpled, eyes wide and empty. Smoke curled from the doorway. Two figures followed, faceless in matte black helmets, weapons raised. Their movements were precise, almost mechanical, like phantoms that had stepped out of the darkness itself. Give it to us, one rasped, voice distorted and inhuman. Now. Jeff's mind screamed to comply, to survive. But something colder took hold. His hand tightened around the device. The symbols pulsed, a ripple of blue light that cast eerie patterns across the walls. The hum grew, resonating in his bones, drowning out reason. The intruders paused, heads tilting in sync, as if listening. And then the device responded. The light exploded outward, a shock wave that hurled the figures against the walls, helmets cracking with sickening force. Sparks rained, screens shattered, and for a moment, Jeff couldn't breathe, couldn't see, just raw energy searing the air. When the glare faded, the intruders lay motionless. The device was cool to the touch, the symbols dark and silent once more. Marcus was gasping, eyes wide with horror. What just happened? What is that thing? But Jeff couldn't answer. He could only stare at the bodies, at the device that had somehow saved them. A low beep pulled him back, his phone. No service, no bars, yet a single message glowed on the screen. Now you understand. You can't win. And in the distance, through the cabin window, more shadows emerged. Half a dozen, gliding through clouds, closing fast. This wasn't a warning anymore. It was a hunt. The jet screamed through storm clouds, lightning flashing like the grin of some vengeful god. The autopilot was dead, the control panels flickered erratically, and the shadows were closing in. Those unmarked aircraft, silent and relentless. Jeff's hands were steady as he moved, but his mind was chaos. The device lay dormant in the briefcase, symbols cold and dark, as if the energy surge had drained it. Marcus was still breathing fast, eyes darting between the shattered bodies of the intruders and the growing silhouettes outside. They're not giving up, Marcus rasped. We can't outrun them. Jeff's jaw tightened. We're not outrunning them. He keyed into the emergency system, fingers flying. Somewhere below, in a nondescript warehouse, a private security team would already be scrambling, locking down comms, sealing records. Protocols he had hoped never to use. The screen flickered with a map, coordinates blinking in the middle of nowhere. A failsafe. We're ditching, Jeff snapped, already strapping on the parachute. Marcus paled. Are you insane? At this altitude. Better odds than them getting this. Jeff's eyes were ice as he grabbed the briefcase. You coming? Or should I send your condolences myself? The door alarms blared, wind howling through the breached cabin as Jeff yanked the lever. The side hatch exploded outward, cold slicing through the chaos. And then he jumped. The roar of wind was deafening, 1,000 needles of ice tearing at his skin. The ground was a dark blur far below. No lights, no landmarks, just blackness swallowing everything. Jeff's breath fogged in gasps, goggles cutting into his face. Above, the jet was a distant glint, flares and shadowed aircraft circling. An explosion lit the clouds, orange bloom, debris scattering like stars. No turning back. He pulled the chute, a brutal yank as it snapped open. Wind screamed, but the descent slowed, the ground sharpening into focus, trees, jagged rocks, snow dusting the edges. Marcus's chute flared nearby, jerky, spiraling off course. Jeff gritted his teeth, angling towards a clearing. They hit hard, bone-jarring. Jeff's knees buckled, snow biting through layers as he rolled, breath punched out in clouds. The briefcase thudded beside him, still locked, still humming faintly. A groan came from the darkness, Marcus, tangled in ropes, one arm hanging limp. Alive, but barely. Jeff staggered to his feet, yanked a knife to cut Marcus loose. No time for pain, for questions, for anything but moving. Those shadows wouldn't stop. Can you walk? Jeff demanded, voice raw. Marcus's eyes were glassy, but he nodded, jaw clenched against the pain. WH, where are we? Somewhere safe, Jeff lied, hauling him up. Branches cracked nearby, too heavy for animals, too precise. Jeff's hand slid to the pistol at his waist, eyes narrowed. The night was too still, too quiet, as if holding its breath. And then a voice, soft, almost amused, from the darkness. You're a hard man to find, Mr. Bezos. Jeff's blood turned to ice. The shadows moved, figures stepping forward, no helmets, no insignias, just dark uniforms and eyes that gleamed coldly. The man in front smiled, a scar cutting deep into his cheek. Not military, not government, something worse, something private. We're taking the device, the man said calmly, pistol leveled. Hand it over, and maybe we don't leave you for the wolves. Jeff's finger tightened on the trigger. You have no idea what this thing is. The man chuckled. Oh, we know. We've been hunting it a long time. A click, safety's off, half a dozen weapons aimed. No cover, no chance. But the device pulsed suddenly, symbols glowing a deep, malevolent blue. The snow trembled, a low vibration that thrummed up through Jeff's boots. The air crackled, static biting at skin, metal. The scarred man's smile faltered. What the? The ground exploded in light. A shockwave ripped through the trees, snow and earth flung like shrapnel. Figures were hurled backward, screams drowned in a roar that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Jeff was thrown, vision fractured into white and darkness. His ears rang, blood warm on his temple. But his hand still gripped the briefcase, fingers locked as if it were all that mattered. When the light faded, silence rushed in thick, suffocating. Figures lay crumpled, smoke curling from armor. The snow was scorched black in a perfect circle, trees splintered to charred husks. The device was cool again, symbols dark, as if it had never stirred. Jeff's breath was ragged, eyes wide with a mix of terror and grim understanding. Whatever this was, whatever he had uncovered, it wasn't just a weapon. It was alive, and it had chosen a side. The forest was silent, scorched snow hissing softly. Jeff staggered to his feet, pulling Marcus up with him. The briefcase was still locked, the device cold, but he could almost feel it watching, waiting. We have to move, Jeff rasped. Marcus's face was pale, eyes darting to the bodies, still, smoke curling from armor. What did that thing do? Saved us, Jeff bit out. For now. They stumbled forward, through shattered trees and snow-stained black. No idea where they were going, just away. Anywhere but here. But shadows shifted between the trunks, eyes glinting in the dark. More of them, closing in. A whisper crackled in Jeff's ear, his calm, dead for hours, now flickering with static. You're not alone, a voice murmured. Female, calm. Keep moving north. There's a cabin. Jeff's jaw clenched. Who are you? Your only chance, the voice replied, unfazed. Unless you want to end up like them. No time to argue. He pulled Marcus, forcing numb legs to move faster. Snow crunched, breath fogged, trees blurred past, dark and endless. The light was fading, night creeping in. And then, between the trunks, a sliver of warmth, wood, smoke rising. A cabin, half buried in snow. They crashed inside, bolting the door. Darkness folded around them, but a lamp flickered on, revealing a woman with dark eyes and a rifle slung over her shoulder. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Welcome to the end of the world, Mr. Bezos, she said softly. We've been waiting for you. The cabin was small, walls lined with maps and radio equipment, a wood stove crackling softly. Jeff eased Marcus onto a battered couch, eyes never leaving the woman. Her movements were quick, precise, locking windows, adjusting dials, checking ammunition. You're lucky, she said without looking back. They usually don't leave survivors. Who are you? Jeff demanded, voice low. She glanced over, dark eyes glinting. Call me Sarah. I'm the one who kept you from getting your head blown off back there. The device, Marcus rasped, clutching his arm. How did it? What is it? Sarah's gaze flickered to the briefcase, jaw tightening. Classified. But if those mercenaries get it, the world's looking at a lot more than some fried trees. Jeff's patience snapped. Enough. You either start talking, or we find another way out. She arched a brow. Fine. You ever hear of Project Orion? Jeff's blood ran cold. The name from the photograph, the one buried for decades. It was supposed to revolutionize space travel, Sarah continued, tone clipped. But they found something. Or someone. Classified it so deep even the president didn't know. Your little toy there? It's not ours. Never was. Not ours. Marcus whispered, eyes wide. Not human, Sarah corrected. Silence fell, broken only by the hiss of the stove. The device seemed to hum faintly, symbols pulsing soft and blue, as if amused by their fear. Jeff's fists clenched. And what do they want with it? Sarah's smile was grim. Same thing you do, power. Enough to make Mars look like a weekend hike. A crash outside shattered the quiet, footsteps crunching in snow, shadows sliding between trees. Sarah's eyes darkened. They found us, she muttered, snapping the rifle into her hands. Basement. Now. But before they could move, the door splintered inward, and darkness poured through. The door exploded inward, with shards slicing through the air. Jeff hit the floor, dragging Marcus down as bullets chewed into the walls, sparks showering from metal shelves. Sarah was already moving, rifle kicking in her hands, shots precise and controlled. Basement. Go. She snapped, ice cold. Jeff hauled Marcus up, half carrying him through a narrow doorway at the back, boots skidding on concrete steps. The briefcase banged against his leg, the device inside pulsing faintly, symbols flaring with each shockwave above. The basement was cramped, lit by a single bulb. Crates stacked haphazardly, radios, maps pinned with red lines converging on a single point, Huntsville. But no time to think. Heavy boots thundered above, shadows flickering through the cracks. Marcus slumped against the wall, gasping, eyes wild. There's too many, Shut up, Jeff growled, mind racing. No exits, no windows, just concrete and steel. And then the wall groaned, stone shifting. A panel slid open, revealing a dark tunnel sloping into the earth. Sarah stormed down the steps, blood streaking her sleeve. Hope you're not claustrophobic, she snapped, shoving them forward. The tunnel was cold, air stale and damp. Metal grated underfoot, light strung at intervals casting eerie shadows. Sarah keyed a code into a panel. Behind them, the entrance sealed with a dull thud, cutting off the gunfire and shouts above. For a moment, silence. Just their breathing, ragged and harsh. Where does this lead? Jeff demanded, eyes narrowing. Away, Sarah shot back. Or do you want to go ask them for directions? Jeff's jaw clenched, but he moved, pulse pounding in his ears. The briefcase felt heavier, symbols pulsing again, almost eager. They twisted through corridors, down ladders slick with rust, until the tunnel widened, cables snaking across floors, consoles flickering with data. An underground command post, old but operational. Sarah moved to a console, fingers flying. Screens glowed, feeds from drones, forests, roads, a black helicopter touching down near the cabin. Figures in dark armor spilled out, faceless, efficient. "You're gonna want to see this," Sarah muttered. She pulled up a feed. Huntsville, the same facility they'd just fled. But the doors were open now, vehicles rolling in. Men in suits, badges glinting, crates being loaded into trucks marked with a symbol Jeff didn't recognize. A red triangle intersected by a silver line. "That's not government," Jeff said slowly. "Nope," Sarah replied, tone flat. "Private contractors. Funded off books by people who don't exist. And they want your little friend there bad enough to kill half the state." Marcus's face was bloodless. We should just give it to them." "Not an option," Sarah snapped. "You hand that over, and we're looking at a new world order. Best case scenario. And worst?" Jeff asked, voice low. Her eyes met his, dark and unflinching. "Extinction," she said softly. The device hummed, symbols flaring with a blue light that seemed to seep into the walls, twisting shadows into something dark and alive. And for the first time, Jeff started to believe her. The underground post was dead quiet, screens casting cold light. Jeff gripped the briefcase tighter, eyes flicking to Sarah. "You're serious?" he growled. "Extinction?" She nodded. "That device isn't just a power source. It's a key, and they're close to finding the lock." Marcus was trembling, gaze fixed on the screens, showing armored figures closing in. There's nowhere to go." "There is," Sarah snapped, yanking open a hatch in the floor. "An old access tunnel. It leads to a safe house outside the grid." Jeff hesitated, but the sounds above, boots, muffled shouts, left no choice. He dropped into the hatch, pulling Marcus with him. Darkness swallowed them, air heavy and cold. The only light came from the device, symbols glowing faintly. A whisper in the dark, almost a pulse. And then, from behind, a voice hissed through Jeff's calm, icy and distorted. "Run all you want. We're already there." The line went dead, and the lights in the tunnel blinked out. Darkness closed in, the device's symbols glowing faintly. "Move," Sarah snapped. No time to argue. They stumbled through the tunnel, boots scraping concrete. Above, muffled voices and footsteps, closer every second. Suddenly, the device pulsed, light flaring bright. The ground trembled. "What's it doing?" Marcus gasped. "Not us, them," Sarah muttered. They reached a ladder, metal cold and slick. Climbing fast, lungs burning, they burst into freezing air, snow, dark trees, and headlights slicing through the night. Black SUVs, armored, closing in. No escape. The device pulsed again, symbols twisting. Power hummed, raw and hungry. "Can it stop them?" Jeff bit out. "Maybe," Sarah said flatly. A voice barked, cold and final. "Hand it over." Jeff's grip tightened. The device flared, blue light searing the dark. And then everything exploded. The blast left a ringing silence. Snow melted to steam, trees scorched black. Jeff struggled to his feet, ears buzzing, eyes stinging from the blinding blue light. The SUVs were gone, just craters and twisted metal. Bodies lay motionless, armor scorched and smoking. Marcus was slumped against a tree, bleeding but breathing, eyes wide with shock. Sarah moved quickly, rifle sweeping the dark, boots crunching overcharged snow. "We need to move. Now," she snapped, voice hard. Jeff's grip tightened on the briefcase. The device was cold, symbols dark and lifeless, but he could still feel the echo of its power, a pulse fading beneath his fingertips. What the hell was that? Marcus rasped, trembling. "Containment," Sarah muttered. "It bought us time, that's all. They'll send more." But Jeff wasn't listening. His eyes were fixed on the sky, clear, star-strewn, but wrong. The stars flickered oddly, shadows shifting behind them, as if something massive moved just out of sight. His phone buzzed suddenly. Impossible, no signal for miles. The screen was cracked, but a message glowed bright. This was just the beginning. No sender, no number, just those words pulsing coldly. "What does that mean?" Marcus whispered, voice small. Sarah's jaw tightened. "It means they're not the only ones looking for that thing. And if we don't get ahead of this, we're dead." She moved, fast and precise, dragging Marcus to his feet, eyes flickering to the tree line. But Jeff hesitated, eyes drawn back to the device, the symbols that seemed almost dormant, like an eye closed in sleep. And then the sky darkened, stars winking out one by one. Shapes moved, impossibly fast, silent. No engines, no lights, just shadows blotting out constellations. Drones, a dozen at least, circling silently. Too precise, too smooth, nothing human moved like that. Sarah swore sharply, yanking Jeff forward. Underground. Now. They stumbled into the trees, snow crunching, lungs burning. Lights flickered between branches, search patterns, sweeping closer. The device pulsed faintly, almost eagerly. Jeff's pulse quickened, a cold realization settling in. It wasn't just a key. It was a beacon. And whatever was out there, watching from the dark, was already on its way.